future-orientated people, because the guardian can often appear to be what? Determined to thwart my plans and vision of the future. And even so, thank you, great, wonderful. So, anyone want to tell me how hard or how easy they found that exercise? Anyone want to volunteer? Front row, because I can see you. How hard was it or easy? Half and half?
Yes.
How many people remembered all of the words from the slide when they drew it? Okay, look at that. And what we've done there is an example of how becoming a leader worth following is about taking the complexity and making it simple. Okay? The easiest thing in the world for a very, very clever person is to enjoy complexity and enjoy basically their own knowledge and actually other people thinking they're really intelligent. Okay? Most academic, no, I won't say that. Most leadership gurus, because I don't want you to be able to do what I do, because then you wouldn't need me anymore. In the age of information transfer, the art is not to give away what it is you do. Whereas if you think what's happened here, is I will guarantee that you can go home tonight and around your dinner table, with whoever you're with, say, this is what it means to become a leader worth following. What it means is to develop the core of who we are. There are some hard skills that we really need to learn and develop. We need to learn how to be more emotionally intelligent, to be able to connect with people. I've got a tool called the Gears you can play with and we'll have fun with. And we need to learn how we become more self-aware of what it's like to be on the other side of us. And I've got a little lens called the Voices we can do that with. So I would say one of the arts of leadership is actually daring to take the simplicity, drive it through complexity until you reach simplicity on the other end. And that's the difference between someone who's very clever and someone actually others really love being with, because you make it easy for them. So this methodology here may look simple, but it's something that you can all use. So we've developed a toolkit that we use, but you can take the same principles, which whatever is the vocabulary and language, whatever is the culture you're trying to create, you can use the same thing. The principle is this: use as few words as possible, be very intentional about the use of that vocabulary, and capture it in a visual icon or image of some description, because that's the way we learn and remember. So Jeremy said in the beginning, we have a filter for every tool that we create. Every lens that we use is simple, which means an educated 13-year-old, so you're all in the clear, can understand it, use it in their own life, and teach it to their friends. So what we found was that allowed us to create a pass-it-on culture, because most of the leaders who come on days like today are very, very clever and very disciplined. Some of you quite like doing the clever strategy stuff. But if you're going to pass it on, if it's going to become part of the leadership culture where you are, it's got to be simple enough that people can use it. This slide that Jeremy shared earlier, if there's one you take home and teach, I would encourage you to take this one. The reason we call it the Liberating Leader Tool, the reason we're saying become a leader worth following is, this is probably the one that has had the most profound impact inside organizations of every shape, size, color, sector we've ever worked with. Because it actually defines in simple vocabulary, what does it mean to be a liberator? How do I learn to calibrate high support and high challenge in the lives of those I lead in every circle of influence? And here's the bad news. You might say, we've had lots of bad news today, Steve, thank you very much. None of us are natural liberators. None of us are naturally good at both high support and high challenge. All of us have tendencies, though we've grown in them over the years, but actually understanding what growth looks like is so much more helpful than someone says, you need to become a better leader. I'm like, how? So for those of us who are very, very good at challenge, pioneers and guardians usually come into that box quite easily. Growth for us is not to say, I'm not going to bring challenge anymore. High challenge is really good, but I need to learn how to bring high support so that the calibration of those two things feels like empowerment and opportunity, rather than at times overpowering manipulation and fear. Those of you who are by nature nurturers, connectors, the creatives, the only ones who are kind of in the middle, and there's a bit of both, most of your tendency will be to be a protector. So what does growth look like for someone with a protector tendency? It means, how do I learn how to bring effective challenge? Not decrease high support, but learn how to increase challenge. And with this, we use something called the power test, which again may be a bit much for this time of the day, but it's just another way of saying if leadership is influence, influence is power, the real issue is what's the intent of the power you wield. And everybody knows what it feels like to be on the other side of your leadership. Because the goal is we're meant to be green, where we're secure enough to use our influence and power for others, we function as liberators. We create a culture where we empower others, we apprentice others, and what we say is we love others. And we define love as to fight for the highest possible good in the life of those we lead. So that's what we're saying. Very intentional use of words, and I'll talk a little bit about apprenticeship in a moment. But the idea is saying that's when we function as a leader in that way, when we calibrate high support and high challenge, whichever one we've had to grow in, everyone feels like you're for me. A leader worth following feels like they're for you. That doesn't mean they're always nice to me. It doesn't mean they indulge me. It doesn't mean they just pat me on the back and say, you're doing a great job, Steve. What it means is they're very intentional, saying, I want to help you fulfill all of your potential. And there are going to be times when it's going to be challenging, but you will always know that I'm for you. You will always know that I'm committed to apprenticeship, that I'm committed to that pass-it-on culture, because it takes real security in leaders to say, I'm going to multiply my skills, knowledge, expertise, know-how into you. Insecure leaders go, why would you want me if I raise them up to do what I do? And I'm going to love you. I'm going to fight for your highest possible good. There's a slide here that I'll show you. We break it down and say this. Do I speak the truth in love? Some of us are very good at speaking the truth. Guardians, pioneers. Some of you are very, very good at loving relationship. But it's the both that creates the breakthrough. And I often say for my friends who have protector tendencies, and don't forget, a protector often looks a lot nicer than a dominator tendency. Everyone knows the dominators, like boo, hiss, we don't like you. But when it comes to protectors, people look and think, oh, they're so kind, they're so nice. They're always trying to protect me from failure. But the reality is, I always ask the protectors, do you love the people you lead? And they look at me and go, of course I do. And I say, well, are you sure? And at this point, they're kind of wondering whether there might be a sting in the tail of this question, because they know me reasonably well. I say, well, if you only bring high support, and because of your own issues you don't deal with high challenge, I would challenge whether you really love the people you're leading. Because I don't think you're fighting for their highest possible good. I think you're dealing with self-preservation in your own life. If I go back to this slide in the yellow. Because when a protector uses power and influence for themselves, it often looks a lot nicer than a dominator. But the reality is, they self-preserve and they disempower because they don't like seeing their people struggle. Because they usually feel that's a failure on their behalf. And often it's about their issue far more than the people they're leading. And we get that passive aggression that Jeremy talked about earlier. It just feels inconsistent. Dominators, well, everyone knows what that feels like. When you've got someone with a real dominator tendency, it feels like they're against you. They tend to disempower, they'll control, they'll manipulate. Everyone knows that one's bad. But I always offer to my protector tendency friends that say, if you're going to move from protector to liberator, you have to break through your own wall of self-preservation. And you have to learn how to fight for the highest possible good of those you lead. And that's going to mean bringing challenge. Going to bring challenge, which at times you're going to feel uncomfortable with. But I always say to the protectors, see, here's the thing, even when you brought challenge, do you know, everyone knows you still love them. But that's what you need. So we basically break it down in the love triangle here. So break it down into two things. For everyone you lead, ask this question. Am I speaking the truth in love? And what's the next stage of character growth for them? What's the leadership behaviour that's undermining their influence right now? If they were going to work on one thing, what would it be? What's the broccoli in their leadership teeth? And what's the one skill set that I'm going to work on with them? Because if you break it down, that's another thing that people appreciate so much of leaders who will actually, rather than say, here's 46 areas that you need to grow in before you can possibly be any good. As opposed to saying, I'm with you, I'm for you, I'm going to apprentice you to be the best you can possibly be. And this is the skill set, this is the leadership behaviour, and we're going to work on these until we see breakthrough. I often challenge all the leaders we work with to say, at the start of each week, whatever else is on your task list, to simply ask of the direct reports you have, the people you have most influence over, ask that question. Ask those 3 questions. Am I prepared to speak the truth in love this week? What's the leadership behaviour? What's the skill set? And if you have those 3, and the people you're leading know that, that is one of the most empowering experiences people have. So, last little bit here. We talk a lot about apprenticeship, and this is almost a little bit of a flag for some of the other stuff we do. We've focused a lot on becoming, but we're very committed to not just becoming, but helping people build. And the art of apprenticeship, again, is another one of those areas that most of us are just unintentionally incompetent in. There's a real art, there's a real science to how you raise up others to do what you do. And that's probably what we're going to have a look at the next time we all come together. But I just want to leave you with a couple of little slides as challenge. This one's called the engagement bell curve. And it's the reason why we're so passionate about the whole concept of apprenticeship. Because over the years, just about every one of us has probably been on one of these great strategic trips away, management, leadership development, whether we went to Harvard or whether we went, whatever it may be. And what happens is leaders come back to their organisation and goes, I have got a file to die for. This is going to change our entire leadership culture. I can't wait to cascade to you, darlings, all I've learned in the last 5 days. What does everyone else do at this point? Oh my goodness, they've been on a course. But they've learned how to play the game, so what they do is they smile and say, oh, I can't wait, it's going to be great. And smile and nod and go, go on, yeah, show me. And all they hear is blah, 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 blah. Look at this slide, look at this strategic index, look at this. And everyone's going like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Here's the file, read it. Oh, that'll be a great help, thank you so much. Most of us have done it. And what happens is, even if the top leaders get the investment, what usually happens is you end up with about 85% of people who usually do the frontline customer engagement and the real work in the organisation, feeling at best marginalised, at worst often downright angry at the fact that why have we wasted that much money on a course where no one else benefited from it? Why do we keep doing the same thing? Why do we keep assuming that complex information transfer will change culture? So that's the reason why we talk about inclusive apprenticeship within organisations. It's the reason why we make things simple, because what we know is, in order to shape the culture of wherever it is you're leading, 90% of the people have to have access to the vocabulary and language in a way that they can understand. So a lot of our stuff is actually deeply offensive to very clever people. Because they're looking at it and go, it's rather straightforward, isn't it? It's very simple. You've got anything more complicated for me? Well, we have actually, we've got lots, but that was where it started. Because in the end, the issue is not can you understand it, it's can you pass it on to leaders who can pass it on to pass it on. So this slide here, we call the multiplying leaders. The real success of any leadership development program inside an organisation is this. Not can the people I apprentice think I'm clever and benefit from it. That happens all the time, and every one of you will have leaders, I guarantee, who would all give huge grateful testimony to the amazing investment you've made in their life. That's a given, tick. But if I was to ask you, how effective have those you've led been at taking what you've invested in them and being able to replicate it in the lives of those they lead who are not in direct contact with you? Well, that may be a different question or a different answer. And even if that was possibly one you want to justify, real culture change happens at the third level of multiplication, where the person I've apprenticed apprentices someone else who apprentices someone else. And at that point, you're into a third layer. And if you do not have a process, if you do not have a methodology, if you do not have a simple, scalable, sustainable way of functioning, you in the end up with that disconnect between the senior leaders and the organisation. So that's why apprenticeship for us is such a powerful component of what it is we do. So know yourself, lead yourself. Commit to that discipline of learning how to grow, learning how to do what we do. And from the becoming piece, if you can become a leader worth following, and you can learn how to build leaders worth following, you end up leading the teams and organisations that everyone wants to work for. But it will never happen by accident, and it has to happen through intentionality. And even if you don't use what we do, find a methodology that works. All I say is, having done this now for the last 9 years, it's amazing what happens when people inside an organisation begin to use the same words, captured in the same visual tool to mean the same thing, because you create conversation where people are actually able to ask real questions, where the tools become a neutral vocabulary and language, which means it doesn't feel as challenging as it does when you challenge someone about a specific behaviour. So, that's pretty much me done. I hope that's helpful. Well, it's good to be here. We've just finished the Becoming a Leader Worth Following session here in Albuquerque, and we've got about 100 leaders today. It's been a privilege to work with them. Love this city, love what's going on, and just wanted you all to know that we're planning on coming back next year, if invited, to do the second instalment called Building Leaders Worth Following. So how do we intentionally pass on the skills, knowledge, expertise that we have? How do we do that in an intentional way rather than an accidental way? So that's the plan. We hope many of you will come. We love this city, we love the leaders here, and it's a privilege from Giant's point of view to be able to serve you all. Thank you.
And having attended the program here today, I can tell you, you should come to it next year. It's a great time, great thoughts, and if you've got a business, it's going to be better after you attend a Giant session.
Thank you, you're very kind. Thank you very much indeed. And we're off to Nashville, I think, next for the next exciting installment of the Liberating Leader Tour. So thank you for having us.